Hey, Mark. Remember that time I was practically beaming about the house in the suburbs? The perfect trial run before the wedding? The master plan in motion? Yeah, looking back now, I realize I was just a smug, self-satisfied prick. The first few days were exactly as I'd drawn them up. Literally. I had a 3D model of the furniture layout finalized 2 months before we even got the keys. The moving boxes were a symphony of organization, a rainbow of color-coded labels corresponding to an Excel spreadsheet that tracked our unpacking progress down to the percentage point. I'd walk through the half-empty rooms, clipboard in hand, and feel this incredible hum of power, control. Everything was falling into place. Chloe, of course, was my beautiful, chaotic variable. She was supposed to be the one painting the accent wall in the living room, a task for which I'd provided painter's tape, 3 different shades of approved blue, and a drop cloth. I came back from the hardware store to find a Jackson Pollock-esque splatter on the hardwood floor, and Chloe, with a streak of paint on her cheek, insisting a blank wall across the room didn't need the symmetrical bookshelves I'd designed. No, it felt empty. It needed one of her abstract canvases, something to break the lines. I remember smiling, thinking of these little clashes as manageable quirks, the spice in our perfectly engineered life. I even recall, with a sickening churn in my gut now, how proud I was of myself when she first got spooked. We were sitting on the floor, eating pizza out of the box, and she just stopped mid-chew. "Do you hear that?" she'd whispered. I'd paused, listening. Nothing, just the wind outside. Hear what? I don't know. A humming. I gave her the patented Liam the Architect explanation. Old wiring, pipe settling, the house breathing. I made it sound poetic, scientific. I told her every old house has its own voice, Chloe. It's just an old body settling its bones. I was so fucking pleased with that line. She'd looked at me, her brow unfurrowed, and smiled. See? Logic. The ultimate balm for a wandering, artistic mind. I was her anchor. I was in control. The first real crack appeared about a week in. It was small, insignificant. Chloe complained about a draft in the upstairs hallway. A sharp, biting cold that seemed to linger in one specific spot, even when every window was sealed tight. She'd hug herself whenever she walked past it. I, the problem solver, went up there with a cigarette lighter. Sure enough, the flame danced wildly right over a specific floorboard. "See," I announced, my voice echoing with satisfaction. "Gap in the subfloor. Poor insulation. It's a simple engineering problem. I'll fix it this weekend." I added it to my to-do list on my phone. Problem identified, solution pending. Next. The second crack was the books. I had a stack of architectural magazines on the coffee table in the living room. I'd arranged them that morning. Spines perfectly aligned, corners flush, a neat little monolith of order in a sea of half-unpacked boxes. That evening, I walked in and they were off. The top magazine was skewed a good 2 inches to the left, the whole stack looking clumsy, violated. My jaw tightened. "Chloe, did you move the books on the coffee table?" I called out. Her head popped out from the kitchen. "What? No, I haven't been in there all afternoon." "Well, they moved themselves then." The sarcasm was thick in my voice. "Maybe you knocked them when you walked by and didn't notice," she suggested, turning back to the sink. I stood there, staring at the books. It was possible, I guess, but I didn't think so. Fucking hell, I thought to myself. Artists, their minds are just everywhere and nowhere at once. She probably did it and forgot 2 seconds later. I walked over, squared the magazines with a sharp, definitive tap, and let it go. Then came the noises at night. Not the normal groans and creaks of a house settling. This was different, faint but distinct. A soft scraping sound from the attic, directly above our bedroom. The first time it happened, Chloe sat bolt up in bed, her hand clutching my arm. What was that? "It's the wood, honey," I mumbled, half asleep. "Temperature change. The trusses in the attic are contracting. It's basic thermodynamics." I'd actually pulled out my phone right then and there, in the dark, and Googled Acoustic Phenomena in Old Timber Structures. I found a university study full of charts and data and read her the abstract in a low, reassuring voice until her breathing evened out and she fell back asleep. I lay awake for a while after that, listening. The sound didn't come again. I felt a familiar wave wash over me, the same feeling I got when I was 8 years old. That night, that memory, it wasn't a monster anymore. It was a case study, sleep paralysis, a textbook example of the mind playing tricks on a tired brain. I had taken this shapeless, primal childhood fear and I had dissected it, labeled it, filed it away under explained phenomena. It was my first and greatest victory of reason over chaos. This house was no different. A cold spot, a misplaced book, a creaking joist. It was all just a series of small, mundane puzzles, a simple equation waiting for a logical mind to solve it. I rolled over, my back to Chloe, and smiled into the darkness. Everything was fine. I had it all figured out. But then, Mark, my explanations started to sound like bullshit, even to me. They were thin, flimsy things, like architectural sketches on tracing paper, and reality was a fucking sledgehammer. It started in the kitchen, a Tuesday morning, I think. Sun was streaming in, birds were chirping, the whole idyllic suburban package. I was making coffee, feeling that old familiar hum of a day falling into a predictable, manageable pattern. Chloe came downstairs, yawning, her hair a beautiful mess. She went to the silverware drawer to get a spoon for her yogurt. She just stopped, her hand hovering over the handle. "Liam?" she said, and her voice was weirdly flat. "Yeah?" I said, not looking up from the coffee grinder. "Come look at this." I sighed, the sound of a patient man dealing with another artistic whim. I walked over. She pulled the drawer open. And there they were. Every single knife we owned. The big chef's knife, the serrated bread knife, the steak knives, even the tiny paring knife. They were all laid out in the utensil tray, but they'd been turned. Every single blade was pointing out, the tips perfectly lined up with the edge of the drawer. A silver chorus of points aimed right at whoever opened it. My first thought was a surge of anger. "Chloe, what the fuck is this? It's not funny." She just shook her head, her eyes wide. She took a step back from the counter. "I didn't do that. I swear to God, Liam, I haven't touched this drawer since last night when we put the dishes away." I stared into the drawer. We had put them away. I remembered it distinctly. Handles out, blades in, always. It was part of the system. I knelt down, my brain scrambling, searching for purchase on the sheer cliff face of impossibility. "Okay," I said, my voice strained. "Okay, think." The floorboards were old, the house settled. Maybe a truck went by, a heavy one. The vibration. "A truck?" Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. "A truck that turned every knife around, perfectly?" "No, not a truck," I snapped, getting up. The logic wasn't fitting, and it made me furious. "A tremor, a microseismic event. This area is on a minor fault line. You get them all the time. Too small for people to feel, but enough to vibrate things into a new position." I said it. I actually said those words out loud. A microseismic event. I spent the next 10 minutes on my phone, frantically searching for local geological survey data, looking for proof. Of course there was nothing. The town hadn't felt a thing. I put all the knives back the right way, the cold steel feeling wrong in my hands, and slammed the drawer shut. We didn't talk about it again that morning. Then came her paintings. Chloe's work was usually vibrant, abstract, full of life. But she started working on a new canvas, and it was different. She'd lock herself in the spare room we designated as her studio. I walked in one afternoon, and the air was thick with the smell of turpentine and something else, something heavy. The canvas was covered in smeared charcoal and dark, muddy colors, and figures, tall figures, lanky, distorted things that looked like shadows stretched past their breaking point. And their hands, fuck Mark, their hands had fingers that were too long, way too long, like branches from a dead tree. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. She didn't turn around. "I don't know. I see them sometimes. In the corner of the room, when the light is low." That was it. That was the first real fight. I heard my voice getting louder, echoing in the half-empty house. I told her she was letting her imagination run wild, that she was freaking herself out over nothing, and now she was trying to freak me out too. I told her it was irresponsible. I told her to stop. She finally turned to look at me, her face pale, a smear of black paint on her cheek. "You think I want to see this, Liam? You think I'm doing this for fun?" I left, slamming the door behind me. Control was slipping. It was sand pouring through my fingers. A few nights later, it got worse. I was in my office, the one room that was completely finished, my sanctuary of order. I was hunched over the drafting table, finalizing some blueprints for a client. It was late, maybe 11, and I heard her call me, clear as day. "Liam? Honey, can you come down here?" Her voice, coming from the living room downstairs. I put my pencil down. "Coming," I yelled back. I walked out of the office, down the hallway, past that cold spot, which felt colder than ever, and down the stairs. The living room was dark, except for a single lamp, and Chloe was asleep on the sofa, curled up under a blanket, breathing deeply. My blood ran cold. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. I hadn't imagined it. I fucking heard it. I walked over and gently shook her shoulder. "Chloe, honey, wake up." She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Liam, what's wrong?" You just called me," I said, my own voice sounding shaky and foreign. She sat up, pushing the hair out of her face. A look of pure terror washed over her. "No," she whispered. "No, I didn't. I was dreaming." She swallowed hard. "I dreamt I was standing at the door of your office, and there was a man inside, a really tall, skinny man, standing where you were sitting. And he was calling my name. But it was your voice, Liam. He was using your voice." We just stared at each other in the dim light of the living room. The ordinary sounds of the house, the creaks and groans I'd explained away so confidently, now sounded like a language I couldn't understand, a threat. After that, the feeling started. The feeling of being watched. You know it, right? The prickle on the back of your neck. I'd be at my drafting table and feel it from the doorway. I'd whip my head around, nothing. I'd be in the kitchen and feel it from the darkened dining room, nothing. Just an empty space where something should have been. The cold spot in the hallway wasn't just a draft anymore. It felt like a presence, a physical weight in the air that you had to push through. It was always there, waiting. The breaking point came at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at the clock when the sound woke me up. A whisper. A low, wet, sibilant sound, like static from a dead channel, but it had a rhythm to it. It was coming from down the hall. I slid out of bed. Chloe was fast asleep, oblivious. I crept out of the bedroom, my bare feet cold on the wood floors. The whispering grew louder as I approached the master bathroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The sound was coming from the shower. The shower head was dripping. Drip, drip, drip onto the tiled floor. But the light from the hallway caught the drops as they fell. It wasn't water. It was black, oily. It hit the white tiles with a soft splat, not a splash, and it didn't run. It just sat there, a perfect dark dome. The air was thick with a smell I couldn't place at first. It was earthy, musty, the smell of wet soil after a storm, of a cellar that's been sealed for a century, of a grave freshly dug. I stood there, frozen, my mind just a blank wall of white noise. For how long? I don't know. Then my hand, moving on its own, reached for the light switch. I flicked it on. The whispering stopped. The harsh overhead light flooded the room. and it was gone. The floor was empty, just clean, white tile. Not even wet, no smell, nothing. My breath came out in a ragged gasp. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. I was losing my mind. I was fucking losing it. Liam? Chloe was standing in the doorway, her face a white mask in the dim light. She was clutching her robe closed at her throat. I heard it too, she whispered, and her voice trembled. That whispering, that was it. That was the moment my whole world, the one I'd built so carefully with logic and reason and fucking Excel spreadsheets, shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't in her head. It was in the house, with us. I grabbed her, pulled her back to the bedroom, and shut the door. We didn't sleep. We just sat on the bed, holding each other, until the sun came up. The next day, I made a decision. A desperate, stupid decision. I told Chloe we needed to reset. We needed to fill this goddamn house with life, with noise, with people, with normalcy. We're having a party, I told her, my voice full of a confidence I absolutely did not feel. A housewarming party. We'll invite everyone. My mom, your parents, Mark, all our friends. We'll fill this place with so much light and laughter there won't be any room for anything else. I really believed it, Mark. I believed logic and light could chase out any shadow. A fucking idiot, right? The party was working. For the first 2 hours, it was actually fucking working. The house wasn't groaning under the weight of some unseen thing anymore. It was thrumming with the weight of 50 people. Laughter bounced off the newly painted walls, music spilled out of the speakers I'd set up, and the air, instead of being cold and stale, was warm with body heat and the smell of wine and Chloe's catering. It was normal. God, it was so beautifully, blessedly normal. I stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, just watching. Chloe was floating through the living room, a perfect hostess, her smile genuine for the first time in weeks. Mark found me, clapping a hand on my shoulder that made me jump. "Jesus, man," he said, laughing, "wound a little tight, aren't we? You've arranged the cheese cubes by shade of yellow again, haven't you?" "Fuck off," I said, but I was smiling. The knot in my stomach had loosened. "I'm just enjoying the acoustic baffling. All these bodies are absorbing the sound, creating a much more pleasant ambient environment." He just stared at me. "You are the weirdest bastard I know." He took a swig of his beer. "So, everything's good? You and Chloe settle in okay?" "Yeah," I said, a little too quickly. "Yeah, man, perfect. Just took some getting used to. An old house, makes noises." I saw my mom making her way over, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. Chloe saw her too, and joined us, looping her arm through mine. And in that moment, I felt it. A surge of the old Liam, the one who had answers for everything, the one who was in control. The party was my logical solution, and it was succeeding. The shadows were gone. They'd been chased out by fluorescent lighting and bad pop music. And I felt so good, so confident, that I did the stupidest goddamn thing I have ever done in my life. I decided to perform an exorcism by anecdote. To take the memory that started all this shit, the one I had so perfectly dissected and filed away, and hold it up to the light for everyone to see. To show them, and to show myself, how silly it all was. I began, my voice loud and cheerful over the music, "this whole thing with the house settling reminds me of when I was a kid, Mom. Did I ever tell you about the time I thought our house was haunted?" My mom laughed. "You thought everything was haunted. The washing machine, the toaster, Mr. Henderson's glass eye." No, this was the big one," I said, warming to the subject. Chloe and Mark were listening now, drawn in. This was the one that scared the shit out of me for years. It's a classic case, actually, sleep paralysis. I launched into the story. I told it like a professor giving a lecture, my voice calm and reasonable. I described the feeling of waking up, of being pinned to the bed, unable to move or scream. I described the terror, but I described it from a distance, like a scientist examining a microbe under a microscope. And the brain, in that state, it tries to make sense of the paralysis, I explained, gesturing with my hands. So it hallucinates. It creates a reason for the fear. an intruder, a demon. In my case, it was a figure coming out of my closet. Chloe squeezed my arm. I could feel her tension. She hated this story. But I plowed on, needing to get to the logical conclusion, the neat and tidy bow I'd wrapped around it all those years ago. I saw this thing, this tall, skinny thing with these ridiculously long fingers, just stepping out of the shadows. Scared me so badly, I think I pissed myself. For years, I was terrified of that closet, slept with the lights on. I chuckled, a confident, dismissive sound. I was the master of my own narrative. Then, years later, I read about sleep paralysis, and it all just clicked. It was never real, just a brain fart, a glitch in the system. I felt triumphant. I had taken the core of my fear, the foundation of all this new anxiety, and I had exposed it in the middle of a brightly lit party. I'd shown it to be nothing more than a trick of the mind. I was free. To really drive the point home, I turned and pointed to a blank stretch of wall in the living room, on the other side of the archway. "It was right over there," I said, finishing my story with a flourish. "It looked just like the old closet in my room, Mom, remember? The big, dark wood one? I used to be so scared of it." I smiled, waiting for her to smile back, to share in the memory, to confirm my victory over the irrational. My mom, who had been topping up her glass from a bottle on the counter, just laughed lightly, a pleasant, tinkling sound that cut through the music. "Which closet, honey?" she asked, her voice perfectly casual. "Your room never had a closet. That wall just had that little alcove where you used to hang your coats." And then, Mark, it happened. The world just stopped. It wasn't a fade. It was a switch being flipped. The music, the chatter, the sound of 50 people laughing and talking, it all just folded in on itself, collapsing into a single, low hum in my ears, like the drone of a high-voltage power line. My smile felt like it was glued to my face. I kept staring at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to say, "Oh, you're right, I'd forgotten," or "I'm just teasing you, sweetie." But she didn't. She just looked at me, her own smile faltering a little, confused by my sudden silence. The wine in my glass trembled. I watched a tiny wave slosh against the side. My hand. It was my hand that was shaking. I couldn't feel it, but I could see it. My brain, my logical, orderly architect's brain, went into overdrive. It was scrambling, trying to build a new structure on foundations that had just turned to sand. She's misremembering. She has to be. Old houses, memories fade. It's been 20 years. But I knew. The second the words left her mouth, I knew she was right. An alcove, not a closet. A shallow recess in the wall. No door. There was never a door. I didn't hear Chloe ask if I was okay. Her voice was just part of the hum. I didn't feel my mom's hand on my arm, her touch suddenly concerned. I was somewhere else. I was back in that room, 8 years old, pinned to my bed. The entire structure of my adult life, the logical fortress I had built to protect myself from the things that lurked in the dark, was based on one simple fact. I had hallucinated a monster coming out of my closet. I had explained it. I had solved it. It was a testament to the power of my rational mind. But if my room never had a closet, if there was never a door, then what the fuck did I see open that night? And the tall, skinny thing with the long fingers that stepped out of it? Christ, Mark, where the fuck did it come